let's make a fall cape. So for this cape, I used the Sewciety Yvette Pattern, and what you had to do was very simple, was you laid out all the pieces on the floor, and then you had to mark it up, and then you had to start cutting out the different individual pattern pieces. I had never done this before, but ended up being very simple. It did take a lot of paper, but once I had everything taped up and ready to go, the cat was having a lot of fun in the background. I started to place it on my fabric and began cutting out the fabric as well as the interfacing. The pattern instructions listed everything that you would need, which was fabric, the interfacing, as well as some lining. So here's the first step, which it was using the front pieces of the cape, and you were sewing the shoulder seams. So again, all this was very straightforward, very easy to do, and I was understanding like how to work from there. Also matching everything up for the front as well as the back, and then just sewing those two shoulder seams. So now I know that was only one step, but I got so excited and I put on my dress form to see what it would look like, and I love the fabric and I love the look, so it was time to move on to the sleeves. So for this, you had to ease the curve of the sleeves, which I had never done before, so this was a really great learning process. It's kind of how you just make sleeves a little bit more three-dimensional. So I found a tutorial online that said you kind of increase your stitch length to 4, and then I kept my stitch a straight stitch, and then you just worked it around, and then you did some gathering on the sleeve to make it be a little bit more, as you can see, like that three-dimensional curve. So just tightening it in a little bit and having more of that sleeve shape. So once I had this done for both sides, it was then time to pin it on to the outer portion of the cape. So I did this for one sleeve, and I'm going to repeat it for the other. Now I do want to be very open and honest, as I believe I did mess up slightly the order of the steps. So when I do this, and you'll see it kind of comes back up later when I'm showing you the ending results, I think you were supposed to sew from like where that first notch was all the way down the back, not just where you did the gathering stitches. But anyways, I moved on and started working on the collar, so I had to add the interfacing, which is very simple to do. You follow the manufacturer instructions depending on what type you got. Mine was fusible interfacing, that you have like a damp cloth, and then you press that over top of your interfacing and then your whatever fabric you're sticking it to, and then this allows it to fuse and become nice and hard. Next, I took the 3 stitches, so on the 2 sides for the collar portions and then across the top, and then I flipped that right side out and I added the collar stands, so with right sides together, added those 2 pieces, and then you're going to basically sew this on, so both portions of it on, and that will kind of allow you to have that bent over collar look, which I didn't know that that's how it works. So this was a great learning experience. Then you also sew up the sides so that there are no raw edges, and everything comes together really nicely. So this is what the collar looks like. You can see that I top stitched the one side as well as along the top, and I'm going to repeat this for the second side, and then we have our collar. So I loved how simple that process was, and I think it's actually a really great way to add a collar on, so I'll definitely be using that for other things that I draft and drape. And now it was time to start working on the front portion of the coat, specifically the lining. So we focused already on the outer portion of our coat, we have our collar, so now it's time for the lining. So you have these front facing pieces, which was the green, and then you have your lining, and what you do is you match these up with right sides together and you take a seam all the way up on either side. So here you can see that seam with the lining as well as the front facing, and one of the steps it said was to top stitch the front facing. So, and I'm going to guess that's so that you cannot see the lining. I'm not entirely sure if I did this correctly. All I did was top stitch it, so I kind of pressed it down and then took that top stitch so that it would lay a little nicer. That's how I interpreted it to be though. And then what I started on after I did that was taking these shoulder seams for either side of the lining. With all of that done, and I did go ahead and e-stitch the lining for the sleeve, it was time to basically start putting all of this together. So what I did was I pinned up the bottom portion for where the lining would be, and then following pattern piece, I found where the notches are supposed to be for the armholes. You definitely could have cut into your fabric to make the little notches there. I like to go back to make sure that everything looks correct and then kind of see where the pattern pieces line up. I know that that's kind of a different way to go about it. It's probably a little controversial. Anyway, anyways, I just began sewing and getting all of this going. So you can see right here, I have where the gap is going to be. So that would be where your armhole is. So I'm not sewing in anything. And then I just very carefully began sewing again and getting this going. So right now on my dress form, I have the outer portion, that's right here. And then I have the linings, this is the front facing, and I have these with right sides together. And it is finally time to really start bringing all of this to become one. So you can see here, I've started pinning it all up using my little quilting clips, and I'm gonna do the exact same on the other side. So with right sides together, matching these up, and I'm gonna take a straight seam all the way down. So again, this was all very easy to understand in the instructions. As you can see here, I did have to take some out as I got a little confused when I was talking about earlier leaving that gap. I didn't do it correctly, so I just went in using my seam ripper and kind of took it out so that it would be easy to redo. And then once I did that, I was able to finishing this all correctly. And then this is where the problem from earlier came into place, where I think you were supposed to sew all of this up for like the back at the beginning, and that was something that I didn't do, as I thought it was going to come up later, and it doesn't. If someone else made this pattern though and had a different experience with it, please just let me know in the comments how you ended up doing it, to see, you know, like what was going on. But here, my sleeves, they look really nice. A lot of this is going to be coming together. You kind of close it off because we're going to be sewing this all so that the right sides are together, and then we'll flip it and turn it right side out. And then we'll just be top stitching it to close up any of those extra raw edges. So it's all going to come together really, really well. Now, I tried to get a video of myself adding the collar into the jacket, and the angle just didn't work out well for it. So the next time I ever try to do that, I will be a little bit more mindful of how I'm videoing it. But basically in here, we have, with right sides together, our collar piece is sandwiched in between the front and the back pieces. And then, as you can see, I ran on my bobbin just at the right time, truly a miracle. And then I did a little bit of top stitching. So things are really starting to come together now. So we have the bottom done, the top done, the collar is in. So now what it was time to do was take that top stitch for the sleeves, or like the armholes of the cape, so that we would be finishing up those raw edges. So here is the cape so far. I absolutely love how it turned out. I could not be more excited with the look. I love how when you fold it down, you can see those little points of the collar. The collar is also at the top. The color looks great. It looks so, so, so good. Now what's time to do though is add the buttons. So I really think that this was kind of like the last step, was the buttons and the buttonholes. It shows 4 buttons, but I think you only add 2 buttonholes. I only added 2 buttonholes. So if I am also correct in that statement, let me know in the comments. These are the buttons I use though, and then I also use my marking pen for where I wanted them to be, as far as where I was going to start putting the buttonholes so that I knew like where to take them. So to do this, I placed my button onto my jacket and marked where it's going to be. So here you can kind of see where that mark is, so I can see how big the button is going to be. Then I got my buttonhole foot and I added my button to it, and I just added it onto my sewing machine. So sewing machines may vary, but the way that mine works is you take the one foot off and then you place this one on. It's pretty simple to do, and then you kind of snap it into place. And then on the sewing machine itself, I then have to change which foot I am using. And so this one for me was 30. And then finally, the last step is you have to pull down a little piece that's called A2 on mine. You pull it down and then you run the foot, and then this is how you get your buttonhole. So it looks really nice. And then I repeated this whole process. Now I have 2 buttonholes, and then I very carefully used a seam ripper to open them up. So this is what the buttonholes look like. Here is 1 button on. It looks so good. I love how it looks. Like, it's such a good contrast, the black button with the green and black houndstooth print. And then what I'm going to be doing is adding 2 more buttons just on the side to give it a little bit more of that decorative touch. I think that this was really fun, and it's one of those things that I'd never made a cape like this before, so I'm really proud of it, and I do love how it looks. If you've made it this far in the video, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and let me know what you want to make next. But here is the final reveal. Everything about this cape was exactly how I thought it was going to be turning out to be. The instructions really weren't too bad. I talked about a couple different places where things kind of tripped me up, but I think in the end, everything came together like I was hoping it would. I love the buttons, I love the color of the fabric, and from all of the steps in the lining, there are no raw edges whatsoever, which makes me just so happy that this will be able to last a really long time, since I did take care of it. If you like this video and you want to see more, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and tell me what you want to see next. Thanks.